on your toes.
Sorry, I would have brought it to you.
No, I
Instantly.
yes, you're good.
Hey, how's it going? What percentage of the public do you think realizes that everything done is done by investors and bankers? I mean, I always, if you had asked me 20 years ago, I would have thought they just paid for everything out of their pocket. I didn't know they were like really taking out bank loans on our freeways or having investors like invested. The freeway damage tourism. You know what codes get in a nutshell, they pay a global investment firm. And I haven't used this stuff all the time. And I have but they're making an incredible amount of money. They gave, of course, if they invested, they actually invested before they got to put all four levels. There's nothing but twins. For a 35-year period, that's what their contract says for the investors. Now, of course, they give money back to us for and then Sandbags, I said this actually last week, Sandbags to save the day, as if they're doing this all favors, which I guess is do. But they're like, oh, we're going to buy it from you. And we'll so how did they do that? They took out a loan to buy out the investors. And then finally, supposedly in 2027, it will all be paid off. And then they'll just keep using it.
Yeah, but the tolls aren't going to pay off anyway.
Well, they're really to subsidy. Well, they have to pay off.
I mean, they have
They have to pay off the people that invested.
Yeah, but I mean,
Plus their investment, but they also get dividend. But besides all that, eventually it'll just be one of the ways essentially gets financed for their Agenda 2025.
sure, but I mean, it's also control, like, it's not to, they always have to do it under the guise of something else, you know what I mean? As though it's, because we have to pay this off, or we have to do this or that,
Right.
it's like the 125.
Right.
And so it's like, you still implement it because you don't want us driving. So like when you say those things, they don't want us driving.
Right.
So when they say those things and then they do all that they're doing, it's like very evident that you're not, that it doesn't matter what you say, it's all gonna be used for nefarious reasons. You're just gonna do it under the guise of that is up to the safety and security and all that. That's true.
Well, anybody, I mean, maybe other people made this much. I mean, most people, about 20 minutes in, they just be like, this is way too much. I'm sorry, I just can't do it. How long is this meeting scheduled for?
I have no idea.
Is that really? Until you get off, when it's done, you don't know when you get off.
Well, because you never know how long they're gonna go.
Good afternoon, I got a committee meeting. Interpreter, before we get started, I'd like to ask our interpreter to introduce themselves and walk through how to access our interpretation services for today's meeting.
Good afternoon. And after, please scroll to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are. Click on the interpretation language. If you're joining through the Zoom mobile app, cell phone, tablet, etc., please press the ellipsis, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on mute original audio to not hear the original Spanish flow in the background. Headsets are available for interpretation. If you're in the meeting room, please check out a headset from the receptionist in the lobby. Buenas tardes, aviso por parte del intérprete. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, favor de desplazarse a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom, donde aparecen los controles. Haga clic en el icono de interpretación, globo terráqueo, y seleccione Spanish, español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom, celular, tableta, etc., presione los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione Mute Original Audio, silenciar audio original. Contamos con auriculares disponibles para el servicio de interpretación. Si se encuentra en la sala de reunión, favor de pedir auriculares con la recepcionista del vestíbulo. Gracias. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the land that we call home. The tribal nations of the San Diego region have historically faced injustices. We acknowledge the harmony that existed between the land, nature, and its original peoples who have endured displacement, persecution, and systemic oppression. We pay our respects to the unceded territory and homelands of the 18 tribal nations in our region, the most in any county in the United States, injustices of the past. Now please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
For the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Chair. We do have a quorum.
Fantastic. Just a quick announcement. Today is the last day to apply as a public member of the Audit Committee. The application is posted on the interested and have at least 5 years of auditing, accounting, financial, or legal experience, or a combination. Apply today. Also, exciting announcement, our independent auditor wants to hear from you. Every year, the Office of the Independent Performance Auditor conducts an annual assessment to identify risks that could prevent Sandag from achieving. Then informs the creation of WIPA's annual audit plan. This year, for the first time, through an online survey, Sandag's independent auditor is providing an opportunity for the public to share what high-risk areas of Sandag they would like to see audited by WIPA in the coming year. Just scan the QR code, and the QR code is on the screen. It just takes a few minutes and will be open to the public through Friday, April 24th. Then we'll go ahead and move on to item 2.2, non-agenda public comments and member comments. Francesca, do we have any public comments?
Thank you, Chair. We do. We have 2 members of the public in the room and then 1 on Zoom. We'll start with allegedly Audra and then Mark.
Yes, nobody knows who you guys are. That's what's so sad. Nobody knows what Sandag is, and so it's like you're never really going to get the input that really should be there. If people really knew what was going on, knew they could go to public meetings and really talk to people about what's going on in their community. Unfortunately, they're just trying to survive. I would like to ask you guys to look into the Fast Track Flex switchable toll transponders that was just mentioned at the last board, at the meeting prior to this. It was in closed session. There has been, this technology has been used and there is a patent on it. And so whoever got into this contract should have known that, should have done their due diligence and made sure that this wasn't something that was going to put the people up to have to pay for the negligence of actually implementing this kind of technology when there's a patent on it. So whoever did that needs to be looked into and potentially have something happen with that, because we shouldn't be getting into these contracts and then the people pay for that, and then again we have to pay even more money now on the back end of it because it wasn't done in a manner that it should have been. And that should have been something that was looked into, that was known, and so there could be something else that's fishy that's going on there as to why you would bring that in, having potentially known that and thinking that you could go ahead and get away with it. You guys want to implement more tolling, and so there's no way that we can move forward when this is on the plate. And I also would like you to look into the whole climate action plan, or everything that Sandag is basing its actions off of, which is propaganda, because there is not climate change the way that you guys say. Lies are very dangerous, and there's geoengineering, weather modification, weather warfare, stratospheric aerosol injections, cloud seeding that is happening that is very toxic to us. So when you guys say that you're doing things to stop that, then that's exactly what you need to be looking into, so we need to audit that.
I think our next speaker will be Mark, followed by Andrea Ebbing.
Mark, everyone must see the YouTube video entitled "Whitney Webb Sounds Alarm. Tech Billionaires Have Completely Taken Over Government." Webb is spelled W-E-B-B. This is an emergency and people have no time left to be ignorant. Some key points are: public-private partnerships have taken over the state of Ohio, effectively making the CEOs dictators who are forcing single-family homes to pay about $700 per month for electricity to power AI data centers. AI data centers are what Larry Ellison's corporation, Oracle, needs to store all of your data. Facet of your life, as he says at 25 this World Government Summit in the YouTube video entitled Algocracy Government. Also see these YouTube video titles: Oracle CEO Larry Ellison in 2024 about AI surveillance. Oracle is genuinely far scarier than BlackRock. The Agenda, Their Vision, Your Future 2025 full documentary 4K. Last title at 5 minutes 20. Taking over Ohio is ruining Imperial County and San Diego, and will soon spread all over California as it has in Ohio, skyrocketing people's electricity. Corporations to enslave us all forever is happening now, and only we the people can quickly share these videos with each other and peacefully stop this. This board will do nothing to help, and we will not get another chance.
So about 16 seconds left. What does this have to do with us? Well, it's happening here too, in Imperial Valley, and there's a corporation doing it there, and they're using the same model. And public-private partnerships are taking over California, everywhere. And you guys are implementing the traffic part of it well.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Our final speaker on the side will be Andrea Ebbing. You can go ahead.
Hi, this is Andrea Ebbing. I mentioned an 8-day false imprisonment that took place in early March, disrupting my life and my health, threatening my life and my health. That took place at Las Colinas. For 8 days, I was denied my antivirals. I was a week late to be diagnosed with the severe shingles I had, which would have affected everyone in Las Colinas, including all deputies who were pregnant, nursing, or trying to conceive. I requested my antivirals 5 times a day, every single day, in person for encephalitis. And they allowed me to sit there and potentially re-rupture. But when I got out, I was beaten severely by Anthony Warner, who has taken 3 weeks paid time off because he claims that I bit him during his Aaron Katz, who works directly with my county contracted rehab owner X, and I have his name all over our files. He is a generational that takes place with his wife and that her father and everything that takes place. I have a post-concussive disorder, a concussion, broken nose, enlarged heart, broken cheek. I have a virus that spread to my brain, and I am back to work today. My car was stolen because SDPD did not follow their protocol. I had everything stolen from me, all of my belongings, and it's cost me thousands of dollars. And Anthony Warner shows a red mark on his hand, and Judge Katz thinks it's appropriate. It's a disgusting, filthy, absolute RICO enterprise that will be uncovered. Thank you.
That concludes the public comments.
Thank you. Are there any member comments? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and turn the time over to Mario for the CEO update.
Thank you. Since we last see each other, we held the board retreat last month. Discussions, I think some of the big conversations were around the Transnet program and looking at the areas of opportunities within that, as well as our future express lanes in the region. Bringing to the board and several discussion points about those two items. On the audit area, we keep working towards reducing the number of action items that we need to deal with. Transnet recommendations presented for closeout in March in the ITALC committee meeting, and they were approved as implemented. And we were able to close all the 42 2028 Transnet recommendations. Now we need to keep working hard on getting all the 2021 and the 2024 recommendations. Also, we achieved, and I'm very proud of the team, achieving an unmodified audit opinion for fiscal year 25. There were 2 years that we got a modified opinion, so it's very good that we got an unmodified opinion. And kudos for the team. They worked very hard on getting that, and this means that our financial statements are presented fairly in line with established accounting standards. We are really focusing on trying that there are going to be some edits, and we do expect those revisions to come out. We are going to be coming in with the final budget around May for the board to consider that. Also, we didn't report yet to this committee, but TCA board unanimously approved moving forward with partnering with Santac to establish the back office. So our board gave us the green light to move forward with TCA. TCA boards gave them the green light. We're working on executing that agreement. Amberlin is leading those discussions. So very happy. Hopefully we'll be able to announce shortly that we have executed that, and then give or take 12 to 14 months will take us to port our back office to TCA and partner with them. On the realm of internal assessments, we really appreciate all the partnerships we have gone. OIPA has given us like the bar. Help us out of this. And we're also in negotiations. I know we're going through an audit assessment on the HR department, and we're also launching our own assessment to really work and build, do some additional assessment on the multiple areas of HR, so we can continue looking at how we can improve. We will be doing this with the majority of the departments in the agency, so we're very excited about this. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. Always good to hear, especially the unmodified audit opinion. That's a big one for us, so thank you. We're going to go ahead to item 2.2 and get the update from the Office of Independent Auditor, Auditor Ruby.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Courtney Ruby. I am the IPA, the Chief Audit Executive, and I am pleased to provide, to let you know what we've been up to since January 16th. So there's been a lot going on. I really feel like OIPA has hit its stride of doing. Did work with Assemblymember Alvarez's office to request state legislation, And the great news is that he has agreed to sponsor it next cycle. So what does that mean? Well, that means that there's added protections. So in my prior position, I had local city and county auditors added to it, and it provides protection of identity of whistleblowers to hold that information. So anybody can come into my office and share things, so we can protect their identity, to refer calls to appropriate government agencies, also to conduct investigative audits, and to keep confidential except in issuing the work papers and everything that's involved. We want to do that because with those protections, then you ensure that you have whistleblowers coming forward because they feel confident. So it doesn't mean that if today that we would not fight for those protections for whistleblowers, we absolutely would, but this provides that level of guarantee that we really want to do. So I'm excited to announce that, and I'm happy to talk to any of you offline or provide more information later. Of course, we're moving forward on our regular audit and investigation. We're operating on all cylinders. That's really well underway, which I believe everyone is aware of, and we've had surveys in gathering what you think is most important and what your concerns are, and we've gotten a great response from those surveys, and I'll be working on putting that information together, using that as a work product to provide my annual risk assessment to you in June. We've had 4 new staff members join us or change roles. First, I'd like to highlight Jennifer Estrada, who has joined us today. She was formerly a senior auditor. Now she's a senior administrative analyst for OIPA, and she's doing an amazing job, so we're so happy to have her. Additionally, we had 3 other members join. Kathleen Medlin, a senior auditor. Eduardo Luna, the former city auditor of San Diego, is now for special projects, a deputy IPA, and he's working on the HR audit. And instead of contracting that audit, we're doing it in-house. And then Taylor Gray has joined us as an associate auditor. And then last but not least, I wanted to touch on something about the audit committee meeting. The public has made a couple comments about the audit committee meetings being canceled. So I just wanted to add some context. In January, we met mid-January, and then we would have had to turn around and meet 2 weeks later. So that's why February was canceled, because we had a mid-January meeting. In March, it was identified that more current information could be brought to you all for a discussion item. So a determination was made, the chair and I talked, and decided to move the March meeting to April. Now in April, our normal meeting was moved because of Easter. So that's how we arrive at April 10th, but I just wanted to assure the public, because I know there was concerns, that is how we arrived at this schedule, but we have a robust agenda, and I don't think we've missed a beat. We've just had to rearrange some things. And with that, that will conclude my comments.
Yeah, thanks for that, Courtney. I sure appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for the explanation of the meeting schedule being rearranged a little bit. It's an important part that we stay consistent, but we also have to have good content for the meeting. Francesca, do we have any public comments?
Thanks, Chair. We do. We have 2 public commenters, Mark and then Andrea Ebbing.
What? Oh.
What's that?
They're separate. I didn't. Can I not speak? Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mark.
Mark, so first of all, I think that Courtney Ruby is great. She's a nice person. She's very good at her job. Unfortunately, at a certain point, I realized that your audit committee is not about ethics at all. And although I'm sure you're all aware of what I'm going to say, I'm really doing this for the public, because they have, if anyone just by miracle happens to ever realize you exist and looks at any of this, it's important for people out there to realize that Courtney's job is just to make sure that the corporation is done correctly without corruption from a corporate standpoint.
So the investors are going to get their money in the bank interest, and all of these systems are going to work correctly, and everything's going to function. For the fact that the entire system is corrupt is not something she's meant to deal with. Now, if people should see the video on YouTube called Corporation Nation by Clint Richardson, which basically just teaches everyone that we thought we had a government. We're just a giant global conglomerate corporation. That's it. And we're just linked. Everything that was American and constitutional is completely gone. Foreign investors can buy our land. They can invest in our government bonds. They can invest in our corporations. We've got BlackRock and State Street. It's just one giant bunch of corruption. And most people out there probably have the impression that, like it used to be, and it should be, that our tax dollars get spent to make our roads and do projects for us. Well, that's complete bullshit. That they actually make deals with bankers or investment groups, global investment groups, people in other countries making money off of us for our freeways and everything, and then bankers might even buy it out, like Sandag bought it out.
Evidence-based, and no one could possibly deny that. Evidence-based, and no one could possibly deny that that's the case. Resident or constituent or a civilian take care of our Summer Stephan, her federal judge, her city attorney sister Rena Stephan, they use the CAPS legacy judges to carry out their agenda. We are not protected at all. You talked about appropriate agencies to report to. When I called the San Diego DOJ field office, a man named Shannon answered the phone. Couldn't have been possibly more rude to a woman who told her that the San Diego Police Department beat her within inches of her life, and there was an open rape kit due to the needle of what no substance, I don't know what substance, was injected into my neck by a fault EMT, which there are numerous lawsuits across the entire country for rape in those ambulances. Those ambulances are run by the city. And when I got to Las Colinas for another unlawful detention, they all said they get the needle. So, where is the protection? I'm not sure what you're talking about. The man was so rude, he told me to call the FBI. I called the FBI. They hung up on me. They work with Dana Sabrow and Summer Stephan. We can see them in all the pictures. It is atrocious. It is disgusting. You are human beings. You hear my voice. Don't allow it. They will take you down too. Thank you.
That concludes the public comments.
Thank you. I know Vice Chair has a comment.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you for that update, Ms. Ruby. I wanted to get a little...
So then that's where the difference is. You typically now, if there was a whistleblower case, you have to ensure that public interest is protected. Amber Lynn can probably speak to it better than I cannot fallen over my words today. But you would ensure that the protections you're providing outweigh the public interest. That's how you can protect in those situations. It's similar to like with the press. This solidifies it and would codify it in state if passed in the state.
Perfect, thank you. And I just wanted to welcome Mr. Everett Thompson. I recognize you, and now I can place you. Thank you for that introduction, Mr. Orso.
To item 3.3, the approval of the meeting minutes from our last meeting. Are there any public comments, Francesca?
Thank you, Chair. There are. We'll start with allegedly Audra and then Mark.
To people. And so as we sit here and we act like we're bringing forward all of these protections, there's still, I mean, that only was brought forward because a whistleblower was retaliated against. And we had to pay her quite a hefty penny because of it. And so it's like, you know, there's so many things that you guys could be looking at, and you don't, because again, you want to protect this entity. And if you were out to making sure that the people were protected, then you would go and you would look at all things, not just some things, and, you know, be very selective, because it's like these types of committees and entities are for gatekeeping in order for the truth not to come forward much of the time. And so it's like, as you're talking about doing a peer review with the auditors, it's like, when you're doing that with your peers, you're always going to be each other. You're not going to really be looking and holding people accountable, and you know, for the people to be believing in these entities and that accountability will happen, it really doesn't. And again, whistleblowers, for the most part, you do get retaliated against, and there is no protection for you. And they can tell you all day long, come into my office, everything will be okay, but you still have to trust the people that are doing it. And if you guys can't be trusted, then it's like, you know, I mean, much of the time, you know, we end up paying people because of the negligence of Sandag.
Our next speaker will be Mark, followed by Andrea Ebbing. This is on the meeting minutes.
So this actually pertains to you guys directly. You might want to think about this. What I was talking about before with Utah and the AI data systems, that Leslie Wexner, who started a public-private partnership there, and this is the same model being used here. And he got things rezoned like the guy is trying to do for his corporation now in Imperial Valley. And eventually what happened is he got rezoned. He got powers that no region there has, no city, no region. He can issue bonds, he can collect taxes. The liquor tax there is used entirely for his corporation to incentivize AI data centers. And out of the 193 there, 120 are in New Albany, which is right next to Columbus, the capital of Ohio. This is being done here in California, and it took over. His model just spread all over Ohio, which basically makes CEOs dictators. And the people, their now single-family dwellings are paying $700 approximately for their gas and electric. That's just
Exercise my whistleblower protection rights when I make this statement and let everyone know that today is see my name on there, but I don't see what I said, and I'll provide some substance for you and some absolute facts. We mentioned at that meeting about the identical campaign transactions discovered for Summer Steffen and Nathan Fletcher. This is relevant because these are board members, previous board members, Summer Steffen and Nathan Fletcher. If anybody can hear me, are you kidding me? You serious? People murder people. It's a fact. So I don't know where that's at, but I also want to in the 460 forms called NA that she is laundering money, or he is laundering money through, and it should be audited. It's filth. It's disgusting. Thank you.
That concludes the public comments on consent.
Thank you. Are there any member comments on consent calendar? If not, is there a motion in a second?
I make a motion to approve the consent calendar item. Chair, Vice Chair, and Audit Committee members, my name is Grace Mino, your Senior Director of Information Technology and Data Science. I have the pleasure of presenting with Kimberly Trammell, Director of Accounting and Finance, and Josh Coulter, Director of Human Resources. And we also have staff in the Contracts Department here to help answer any questions you may have. A previous update was provided about a year ago during the March 7th, 2020. And then an update of an ERP system of the ERP was requested at the December Audit Committee. Zooming out and what Sandag does as an agency and its 4 pillars. Big picture, we plan transportation for the community. We also tackle issues like land use, air quality, law enforcement data. We also are unique because we build and design projects. And we also manage and preserve over 9,000 acres of sensitive habitat for mitigation. We provide resources like data, the Youth Opportunity Pass, 511, housing funding, and grants. And these administrative functions of the agency supports Sandag's 4 pillars. So what is an ERP? Exclusively for local government. Limited. So The ERP planning and implementation has been quite a journey. Chair Fisher had mentioned back in the December 2025 Audit Committee that the ERP was initially sold as a way to solve for every issue to address previous audit recommendations. And as we have continued on this journey, we have found that the ERP was not going to be the save-all, be-all. Each circle on the side represents one of the systems used previously and was anticipated to be incorporated into the ERP. The agency started with 15 separate built in-house legacy systems and have now consolidated these systems down to 5. There's not to say that these are the only systems Sandag has. However, these are the systems that were identified as being best suited for consolidation. We have completed major module implementation for finance, accounting, and HR, which is a huge for the staff and the agency. As we've been on the journey, we've learned more about Tyler's ERP system capabilities, and it was identified that the magenta circles are systems that require further evaluation to determine the best approach for providing these functionalities, and this goes back to the first slide of what Sandag does. While the system is very powerful, there are still other areas where ERP can complement a different technology solution for the functions that Sandag has, such as we still probably need a project management software system, a grants management software system, and even a resource loading system, as ERP may not be the sole technology for these functions. The 4 remaining technologies that are still in the magenta circles, one is IMBM, which is where we do a lot of our staff budgeting, CMS, which was brought back as our single source of truth for contract management system. Those 4 systems are the hurdles under leadership changes, a compressed timeline for management procedures, while also happening in the background was the agency's building move from 401 B Street to here at the West Building. Staff had to do the heavy lifting of implementing the various phases while also doing their normal everyday work. So I just want to give huge kudos to the staff who are the backbone of this agency. And now I'll pass it to Kimberly Trammell, who will address Vice Chair Molina's questions from the December 2025 Audit Committee regarding what financial functions are currently being performed in the ERP.
Hello. So the core functions currently in the ERP can be categorized into the 3 areas on the slide above: financial, human resources, purchasing, and contracts. In the financial area, which is my area, so we are using the system to do accounting. And prior to going into ERP, we actually had 2 different accounting systems to streamline our. Other things we do on the financial side of the ERP system include paying our vendors, tracking our revenues and expenses for financial reporting, loading our annual portal section that has been added since we spoke. Purchase card reviews, so now we do our review and approval of all purchase card transactions within the ERP system. Also, since the update of last March, the human resources, the blue box on the slide, has gone live. And this includes human resources and payroll. In ERP, we are tracking our employee hours, we are paying our employees out of ERP, we are putting together employee records, so all of the employee information and data. We're providing our employees with benefits and benefit enrollment, and again, the documents related to all, which then become the agency's expenses in all of our projects. The third area in purchasing and contracts, as we've previously discussed with the audit committee, it was determined to go back last year. The purchasing controls are still entered into the ERP and the limits established. Stronger internal controls that have already example here on the slide of what we go through to pay a vendor. But before we went live with ERP, we were doing a lot of this on paper, or it was something outside the system being electronically transferred to get approvals, and then it was entered into the system at the end. Now that it's in ERP, you start very similarly with the contract administrator or the program manager receiving an invoice, but the first thing they do now is enter it into the system. There's 3 improvement areas that I really want to focus on as part of this process, and the first one, which I've kind of already alluded to is that we're putting all of the supporting documentation and the invoice into the system. So everybody's looking at the same piece of information, and that is available many, many years down the road. Once they've loaded the invoice and the supporting documentation into the system, there are certain rules. It's not expired or it's not out of money. So those automated controls are a major improvement to this process of paying our vendors. So the system, a major improvement. All of the review is done in ERP. You press approve and it goes to the next person. And then at the end of the process, we cut the check to the vendor. So we've added some consistency with these automated approvals. We've added controls in this process, but I will say it took longer for us to cut a check. One is learning curve. That always adds a little bit of time. So in the 2 years that we've been paying vendors out of the system, we've really worked to reduce the time involved from the point of receipt of the invoice to the check going out the door. We've done a couple different things to do that, but we do still, I will say, struggle with some of these controls that are involved to kind of make sure everything is set up. Now that we've given you some insights, on how we're using ERP, I'll turn it over to Josh to talk a little bit about what ERP does not do.
Years into the ERP system and the connected data. As Grace mentioned, the ERP be a catch-all. We will always rely on specialized platforms such as with banking interfaces and recruiting tools to handle niche specific technical capabilities. As we advance operational efficiency and effectiveness, we will continue to use areas that fall outside of the ERP's refined scope, including, for example, for personnel and learning systems, and planning. We have detailed labor cost budgeting and project resourcing, capital project management, contract planning, and granular inventory tracking. We're committed to exploring ERP capability and are from us. One challenge with the ERP so employees can operate with confidence and efficiency. The system itself, but how we've adapted our processes around it. We're making sure we're not just layering new technology on an ongoing training approach so employees can not only learn the system initially, but continue to build proficiency over time. We're strengthening support within departments by identifying subject matter experts, people who are accessible without relying solely on a centralized team. We're continuing to address audit, evaluating where the system is meeting our needs and where it isn't, moving from implementation to option, strengthening.
As we've mentioned, the major modules are live in ERP. This slide identifies some remaining enhancements in the system that are currently being developed. These remaining items are primarily smaller employee and board reimbursement. We are currently paying these out of ERP, but we're doing it like they're any other ERP that is more customized towards employee reimbursement and board payments. It'll provide additional direct deposit options. This function actually was utilized for the first time within the last month for the last round of board and committee member payments. We will be rolling it out for vendor reimbursement next, which will enhance enhance the vendor's interaction with Sandag. Currently, they submit invoices via mail or email. This will give them an electronic submission option. Area is our annual comprehensive financial report builder. We actually had 2 training sessions this week to work on setting up this module. And the fourth, building labor budgets. The full data before we can truly see its functionality. And now that we're getting close to having that data, we will see if it's the best option for preparing those salary budgets. In conclusion, it's been a journey. There's been some bumps along the way. Does not do, and we've realized that it's not going to solve all of our technology needs. We've implemented the major areas of accounting, finance, and human resources. They're live and in use. We appreciate all the time and effort that staff has put into the system up to this point to bring it active, and have needed to work through extensive changes that came with the new system. Sandag is benefiting from the automated internal controls in the ERP system. ERP has connected multiple functions. As we mentioned, our employee data then goes to a time card, then goes to payroll, then goes to see expenses in our financial side. Our current focus is on for ways that the tool can help us respond to audit corrective action plans. In some cases, that will take questions.
Wonderful. Sure appreciate the report and the follow through with what was requested. Do you have a clarifying question before we go to public comment? Okay, we're going to go to public comment. If there's any fantastic, just remind our public commenters, please stay on topic for each agenda item.
Thank you, Chair. We have 2 public commenters. We'll start with allegedly Audra and then Mark.
Party data breach. And then in 24 and 25, there's been significant litigation. Many noted about vulnerabilities such as lack of multi-factor authentication in their models. There's 18 federal lawsuits across the country regarding this entity. So, I mean, are we going to get into a lawsuit at some point because you guys have negligently entered into this contract knowing, or you should have known, because it's like, I shouldn't just be a person on the boat being able to look something like that up, and you guys sit here and act like this is making it easier when you actually have to be trained to use it. How is that making it easier? If you have to, how many hours are being spent on this training, and how many people do you have to train to do it? I mean, is this cost effective? Is this efficient? And again, how much money are we going to have to spend on the back end of your decision to implement this? That's what seems to happen, is that you guys don't do your due diligence and make sure that what you're entering into.
If it works, which, I mean, there's all these lawsuits, so obviously it doesn't work. But if it did work, our intent is by, well, here in California, Governor Newsom. And now we don't have a dictatorship strictly, we have a corporate oligarchy. So there are mandates that you guys are required to go by at Sandag. I want to give people out there something to really think about. What Sandag is doing, they're saying, oh, we've got a housing problem. So now a child can figure out that obviously the corporations need to do what they did around 1955 and pay people a good livable wage so that a lot of the population can buy property and the rest of the population can completely rent property without any kind of government subsidies from taxpayers. They don't do that. The divide is getting worse and worse, and instead, Sandag thinks it would be great if, as inflation subsidized, they're making low-income housing where contractors and global corporations with investors go into business doing that. Very nicely, not first. Our system is. And people need to think about that. You need to look up ionosphere tiers and geoengineering universities.
I just wanted to make sure that I was understanding. I wanted to make sure that I understood the slide that had the magenta circles, and Kimberly or Grace, I think you mentioned from 15 separate, systems that all of this information was currently operating, it has been consolidated to 5. And if you go, I think one more click, Grace, right? These are the 5 systems. Okay.
Including the ERP. So
how it's going to help us manage better. A good example is project management.
And this is one of an example, right, of everything else. But in this specific process, did you say that this is actually a longer process or more laborious? Or I didn't quite understand what you were saying there.
So I wasn't here before for the old process, but I have heard people say that it did take longer when we first started issuing checks out of ERP. And I will say that are now in place. So now they have enough budget, and there has to be an existing contract, and it has to have enough funding on it, and it has to be tied. The other thing too is people just kind of had to learn that I have to go in and check my approval queue, and I have to go make sure I'm doing my approvals in a timely manner. So I think we're over that hurdle, but that is one of the things we faced along the way, just making sure people were aware. You have this approval, you need to go into the system. If they had to learn the system, if there was anything they didn't know how to do, there might need to be some assistance around. And as I said, we're really working on what can we do to streamline this, to train people, to be proactive about making sure those budget and that contract information is ready to go, so that we can reduce this time period.
And I'm going to even add more complexity to it. Example, you have a project manager that's dealing with a capital project or with a grant. That I'll give you a very thin. That is the project budget, but within the capital, within the budget, within the fiscal year, they have authority to spend, let's say, 100 for the construction. 7 maybe a procurement for the special X-ray machines, the other contract. So breaking those different things, in knowing that a specific project may have much more only allowed to spend so much based on what the board approved as a budget. So bringing all those interconnections that it can be variable, as well as other agencies to approve the that's maybe already within the budget but not approved, or the reimbursement of it. All those elements have to be start including it, and it includes checkpoints in the ERP that are being identified now.
I don't know if you had something additional, Ms. Grace?
No, just to add that these internal controls, before, like Kimberly said, it was a very manual process. So it was like you had a piece of paper. I think the time, because you could just walk to somebody and ask fiscal year for that phase of the project. Acclimated, again, we mentioned that the training and the acclimation and the change management of how it used to be to how it is now is probably what made it a little bit longer. But I think staff and
I'm a big fan of it. I'm sure there's safety nets in here. If there's a mistake, before the mistake becomes enormous, there's ways to minimize it for the user, right? To go back and maybe correct the mistake before something else happens.
Yeah, and that goes in part back to the basis of the system. So like we set up a vendor, we have all their address information, we have all of their banking information. That's all in one area, and it's only touched somebody that is working with that vendor invoice off of all of that vendor information. So information they need. So you remove some of the potential for human error by having that interface. You couldn't put, and it'll let you know if there's an issue there. And then there's also, I mean, part of the approval process is that you then have somebody else that is checking what has been entered by the first user.
Good, thank you. Just two more questions, and I don't mean to take too much. First, I want to understand, is this update for the ERP system, is this also being presented with other committees, or is this something that's kind of owned by the audit committee?
So we are scheduled to bring this to EC.
Okay, I just want to make sure, is there a special focus maybe for audit, and that's the reason we're talking about it here? Or is it because I was asking so many questions back in December?
I believe it was because this was initially sold to even previous audit committees that the ERP was going to be addressing so many audit recommendations, and so we continue to bring the update to the audit committee because it stemmed from there. But we are looking to bring it across to either executive committee or board if it's the request or the desire is. But again, I keep forgetting the date. First Friday of May 1st. Oh, it is May 1st. Okay, so yes, May 1st we are bringing ERP 101 to the executive committee.
Perfect. And my last question really is, I remember the big timeline, the different system that will forever be tweaked with and this and that. And but can we say what percentage is left to implement? Are we maybe 90% there?
I think so. But from a finance perspective, I think Kimberly's a little bit more conservative and wants to say how long. What do you think?
I would still say we're 95% of the way there. I mean, like I said, the remaining things we're working on. There's a potential that some new enhancement or some new add-on comes out that makes sense. So that's why we're continuing to evaluate, continuing to assess, and see if these tools make sense for us.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to ask so many questions again.
Yeah, they're very thoughtful questions.
I have a question. My question is on the CMS system. So what, it seems like there's a lot of transaction on the ERP. What specific, can you give me like specific examples on why are you using the CMS?
The ERP didn't have a lot of the capabilities that we need to initiate a contract and get it through execution and keep ERP so that everything can be paid from it, but it handles only that part of a contract. So now CMS is our record of truth on contracts. The procurement, the contract, and the execution are all kept in the CMS.
So you don't see CMS going away then?
We don't. We definitely, we tried to use ERP and there were definite limitations on the contract side that were causing some bigger problems because we were trying to kind of force what we needed in a contract into the ERP.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to just add a little more context to that, Donna Batiste, your CFO. So one of the things that CMS was very good at, not just development of the contract and getting it through that workflow, but a lot of the status reporting on expiration dates and look-aheads and all of that is just simply not available in the ERP, which was designed more to the features of the contracts module were designed more for those in fiscal internal controls. But the overall contract management, a lot of the just much, ability to get some of that data.
Can I add one other piece to that? So when Grace mentioned that the system is configurable, so when we're talking configurable is like a huge wall of light switches. You can say, I want this one turned on, I want this one turned off. But the system just doesn't have that capability and you can't necessarily add it in. There are some small refinements you can make sometimes, but for other things.
Member, I just want to say from an audit perspective that I have spoke to this before, so I just want to bring it current.
contracting was not consulted with the ERP. So I just want everybody to remember that. So when it got to this place of it not working, it was never properly vetted. So, and then contracting, I think, has done a great job to, again, have to turn and be nimble and now re-engage with CMS. CMS was the previous system.
I've been on the committee for a while, so I went through those contract procurement with many findings. And one of the solutions was, the system was not good. ERP is very antiquated. CMS, the ERP that would solve the problem, right? So at the time, the impression we got. So it's a bit hard for me to reconcile. Okay, yes, the contracting part is not, good enough. So we go back to CMS. Is it a conscious choice that CMS is really the best tool that you can have, or just because it's better than ERP, but it's still not very good, and therefore you need to look for something better? That's very unclear to me.
I think a good analogy here is a square peg in a round hole. I think the ERP is a very great accounting and finance tool, and we were forcing it, like the contracts department took a huge accounting and finance tool, and we were forcing it, like the contracts department took a huge undertaking to try to make ERP the system of record, because they already had CMS, it was a single source of truth, and they took that and they took how many months, Janet? Or it was a single source of truth, and they took that and they took how many months, Janet? Or Don? It was like 9 months?
Selves, right? I think some of the things in the audit were, this is one system. I think some of the things in the audit were, this is one system with this information, but how is it getting? What's being encumbered and what's being paid. He was going to look beyond just those two things at, where are all the records stored? Be able to do all of that, right? But we actually have project files and project records with requirements for how we manage those records by our funding partners, and then we have the contracts themselves, and then we have the financial piece. And the ERP simply isn't able to pull all of those together. But the CMS is not it's a contract management system. It's not a record management system. So looking there, we still will have to have project files associated with it. There will be contract documents, there will be project documents, and then there will be...
Agnes, on my opening statements, the journey, we have many journeys going on, but I think one of the journey assessment of our contracts, processes and units, and that's where we would and procedures. Is working, is checking the box, we're getting things done, we're being compliant with audits, we're being transparent. Can we be better, right? Can we be more nimble? Can it be just better, right? And I think we as an agency have a lot of mileage to go on evaluating the multiple departments that need to deal with those issues. We're going to be doing the HR, and on the HR is going to be also looking into that. Further evaluation.
That's good to hear that. I totally understand that ERP doesn't meet all these needs, so you need something else. I just want to make sure that something else that needs that ERP is not delivering. And the second question I have is, you talk about this Tyler system, the ERP is being used by over 2,500 agencies. Are you seeing similar things, agencies similar to SANDAG also need to use this outside, like the CMS or different modules that actually is very specialized and just feed into ERP? Is it a common thing, or this is more unusual for what SANDAG is doing now?
I can go first, coming from, and it's all about how are those well-known system that we use, and it actually does talk to the ERP, and as we bring new applicants and they become employees, it actually feeds a lot of their new hire paperwork into the ERP, removing manual processes. So I would say in my perspective it is very common, and to the other points about technology always changing, it's a very dynamic landscape, and as things change, as needs change, or as rules and guidelines, on a not frequent basis, but you would sometimes be changing some of those systems out.
Yeah, I understand that usually ERP doesn't fulfill all the needs, but there's always some subsystem. I'm really referring to more specifically about the contract management one, as well as project management, because those are a big piece of it.
And I think in the public sector, one of the things, and I wasn't super close to this, but one of the things that I kept noticing was the difference in SANDAG's projects and compared to other public agencies where we do things that are maybe more unique or not as common as local cities and governments, things like that.
Which leads perfectly into my comment. So I came from a city that had Tyler ERP, and in many ways SANDAG as a special district that does a little teeny bit of grants management, but not enough to really meet most agencies' needs, and it's not a contracts management tool. So that's kind of my perspective. It brings everything together, but it doesn't really manage processes outside of finance and HR.
And also how, is it like a daily feed from all these subsystems to ERP so that what you see in ERP is still more or less in line with the other subsystems? How frequently is your financial record?
It's going to vary depending on the other system and the interaction. So like CMS is still a duplicate entry. So you're going through to the contract approval in CMS, and then once the contract is approved, the contracts team is going in and putting the key information into ERP.
So you cannot just interface the two systems?
Yeah, so there's some areas of interface, and there's other areas where either an interface isn't available or has not been explored yet, or we're just not ready with one. So I think that's something we're definitely looking at, is where can we build interfaces so that it's automatic and it's regular updates. And I don't know, Grace, do you want to add anything?
For any future systems that we're bringing online, we are making sure that we can have integrations with the ERP system. So one that we're looking into right now would be like a travel system like Concur, and then when we bring that online, then we make sure we have an integration with ERP. But again, we're not even there yet. We still have to do training, testing, validating, and then we would implement.
I'm glad that going forward, that will be a focus, because if you do duplicate entry, inevitably there will be differences being errors. Yes. Okay. And last but not the least, I do want to say, good job. 3 years of implementation, doing ERP system implementation is not a small feat. It's a lot of work when you have your regular daytime job too. So I do appreciate everyone, the team, hard work to get to where we are. It sounds like there's still more work that can be done. So thank you.
Thank you so much for giving big kudos to our staff, because our staff really did a lot to get here. So thank you so much for that.
You go to the presentation, and I agree with respect to being here. This was brought here initially as the end-all be-all, and being in the industry, I was very suspicious of that, and it's turning out to be true. This was going is, because of this end-all be-all, the way the audit recommendations were, like, these are going to get fixed at some point in the future, and there's a lot of them out there, and this system's going to take care of it. And clearly, I think we're probably not there anymore. So I'm wondering, have we, with all the respect to the audit recommendations that have come out of the contracts audit, do we think that, do we need to take a look and say, okay, these are not going to get addressed by ERP, and we need to start working on other ways to address these particular recommendations?
And are there any recommendations to implementation, or are there any recommendations where there is one thing that needs to proceed the other recommendations to occur. And so with that, one of the things that I will do is to kind of step back, look at the recommendations again holistically, and try to figure out which of those recommendations are still relevant, are obsolete, if we're changing processes internally, if we need to kind of have a discussion with WIPA to kind of shift and rethink about the recommendation while still meeting the intent of what the original issue was. So long answer, but the answer is yes.
Okay, thanks. And just from the, I appreciate it. Good to see you, Sinead. And I appreciate the information. I guess relative to that, that seems like the right plan. And I'm not your boss, but do you have an estimate of timeline on when you think that's going to happen? I mean, these recommendations have been out there for a long time, so I'm just curious.
Yes, I'm looking at it on a quarterly rotation. So for example, some of the recommendations that are related to the back office system, those are now kind of coming, not necessarily coming on my radar now, but those are recommendations that I'm looking to bring forward to the board, to committees, to sort of say, these are recommendations that whatever the obstacle may be or whatever changes we are making, and we need to kind of consider whether or not we're going to move forward, we're going to change, we're going to shift, etc. So on a quarterly basis, not to say that it's going to be, you know, years out, but just kind of looking at things on a regular basis on a quarterly cadence.
Okay, great, thanks. Yeah, I'll definitely be looking at our annual summary and see what things look like in that report. Appreciate it. Next, I don't know if this next one is sort of a question or a comment, but just from the perspective of, you know, when I'm listening to what you're talking about and the struggles that you're facing, I don't know, you're talking about having gone to conferences, or some people go to conferences with the vendor. I am kind of curious how they talk about where AI is going to be taking this. I mean, some of the things that you bring up, like having a subject matter expert. I mean, Josh, you mentioned this is a system that's not customizable, only configurable. Well, an AI agent can easily go look at the configuration, could look at the rules that we're putting in place, could have a natural language interface to it, and if somebody says, I'm stuck doing that, I get around it, could answer those questions. And I'm just saying that exists today, and hopefully the company that look, they're out of office. Let's go make sure we're
hired an AI and data manager, so we have somebody on board. We just released a CEO directive on AI. We're drafting our AI policy, and then we will be looking into tools to help us increase our efficiency when it comes to the different realms and the business needs throughout the agency. So again, probably a long process, just like that implementation timeline, but something that we are working towards, and realize that that is something that can help with ERP and all the other systems that we have.
I just want to say thanks to staff. Melina, as well as members, we've sat through the ERP since its inception. We heard a lot of promises. I think today is probably the most in-depth presentation we've had, the conversation, the questions were asked, that I finally understand it much better, much more clear what its limitations are and where it's going to take the agency and where it's not going to take the agency. And it's not because it's a pitfall, it's because it's just the limitations, and that's okay. And I think that staff has worked extremely hard to get this done, and for that we are grateful because it's made us a better agency. And going forward, again, it makes a lot of sense to have a system like this in place. Lots of checks and balances, and I think that that's so important when we talk about, you know, the funding for SANDAG doesn't come off of some big business. It comes off the taxpayers. It sounds like it takes a little bit longer to get a check cut than it used to, but at least we know there's money in the right account, and those who are you know, approvers are the ones who are doing this. So again, really big thanks to staff. I don't have any questions. My colleagues asked all the important, heavy questions, but I just wanted to say thank you for the presentation. And I really do hope that EC does, you know, practice along and enjoys it and wants to take it to the general work, because I think it's an important part of kind of a closing of the loop with something that's been kind of open and spoken about and tapped on a few times over the last couple of years. But now I think that there's a clear vision path that the board members can see that, hey, this is where we're at, and it's an important part of this. So again, thank you. We're going to go ahead and move on to item number 5, which is the quarterly status update for audit recommendations and corrective action plans. And Auditor, the time is yours.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to hand it over to Michelle Ludwig, the Deputy IPA.
Deputy IPA, implemented, and tracked. The planned implementation date is the original deadline provided by management. If that timeline changes, the revised date is shown, and the original date is displayed below with a strike-through for transparency. In Q2, there were 65 recommendations due. This slide shows the distribution of those recommendations by the audit title. So of the 65 recommendations that were due, management provided evidence for 17, which we reviewed during the quarter. And of those 17, 6 were determined to be implemented, 10 were partly implemented, and 1 remained in pending status. For the remaining 48 recommendations, we did not receive evidence during the quarter. However, in the subsequent quarter, SANDAG provided either a revised implementation date or supporting documentation for those items. So this slide shows the total recommendations completed by year 2023. So looking ahead, 18 recommendations are due in the third quarter. On these final 2 slides, we've summarized the 17 items that we reviewed this quarter, including their current status. I won't go through each individually, but I do want to highlight that in the subsequent quarter, management provided revised dates or additional evidence for those that were in partly implemented or pending status. We will continue to monitor all the open items and report back on any significant changes in the status. And the audit recommendation dashboard, which is located on the website, is updated to reflect any questions.
Thank you. Are there any public comments, Francesca?
Yes, Chair, thank you. We'll start with allegedly Audra, and then Mark.
Oh my gosh, I can't trust you guys to audit stuff, especially just with that last item. Just some big corporations or entities, right? Not the ones trying to take over. What a coincidence that you guys didn't have evidence to complete. And, you know, we're auditing of the toll system for the SR 125. I'm wondering, how can we be talking about implementing more toll roads when not only do you have significant litigation coming forward from your fast track trends? No, we're going to make sure that, and I just can't trust anything that comes out of your guys' mouth when we won't even talk about GHG. Like, you should be auditing the data that you collect as far as your GHGs goes and seeing if we're really like combating those, right? What's that data based on? Propaganda, right? You guys don't want to talk about the geoengineering and things like that. So when you're not willing to address the things, because you can go online, I mean, there's plenty of people, like the guy that started the Weather Channel was talking about this, and it's like, I mean, it literally falls upon deaf ears. Instead, we're just, you know, contracting with BlackRock and Vanguard. I'm sorry, it's just, it is so ridiculous, but I will say that you can go to thegeofight.com. You can watch a movie on Amazon Prime called Climate Trails. In fact, in and I suggest that you guys.
So Tyler Tech is the largest company in North America focused exclusively on software and services for the public sector, with 85% of their customers being local government entities. They built an empire across financial management, courts, justice systems, public safety, CAD, RMS, property appraisal, tax administration, and K-12 education technology. It also goes on to mention some of their subsidiaries, which they're a global company. They do the Philippines, Australia. They've got an AI branch. AI-powered field inspection solutions. And this is what people need to understand, is that America is just gone. that we're being controlled globally. And their investors, their major investors are BlackRock, State Street. These are the companies that own everything. People out there should be seeing videos. There's one, I think the title is something like BlackRock. They may be thinking, oh wow, $700 bills for electricity. Maybe I'll invest in SPGD, or maybe I'll invest in these companies. If you're thinking that way, you are the fucking problems, because that is totally evil. Totally evil. And that's the thing, is we've got a lot of society that's been convinced, well, there's winners, losers, and I just want to be a winner, so all this is okay. It's not okay. It's not okay to be a winner. I do not want to be a winner investing in this, even if I know what to invest.
Thank you. Your time has expired, and that concludes the public comments.
Okay, thank you. Are there any member comments? I just actually have a real quick question, because I noticed that a lot of the action items lead back to the contracts and procurement department. And this goes back to the question that was asked about CMS. Is CMS, top of the line? I know it meets its needs. There's something that was used before from the comments that were made by Agnes. She was in a meeting where they said it wasn't a really good program. That's why they decided to go to the ERP. I mean, I guess I have the thought is, if we find a different program, does it help?
Than what management is doing in relation to the efficiency that was identified. So that's something broader than what the audit could address.
Gotcha. Okay.
And, well, no, go ahead. I had another comment to make.
I guess the question is really for my colleagues here, right? So those that are not exactly something that I would be very proud of, to be honest. And I'm trying to think, what can we do to help? I'm sure management, already working very hard on this, and the sense I get, they do take this seriously. So even if it's a bandwidth, some older one, have some external, reasons why it could not be fixed. Maybe not so much the audit finding here, but the other committees of findings. So I'm just, a little bit at a loss here. Like, what can we do to help support and move this, forward faster? Are there any things that
we didn't receive? We've already received them in-house. So while I agree with you, the stats could be better. I think probably giving it a little bit more time as the systems get up and running, and evaluate it from that standpoint, because I know when Mario and I spoke, it was that they were working on everything. He was signing off on things as I was talking to him about us needing things to be turned in.
And then I would also like to make a suggestion. I am reflecting recommendations that are due up to a certain close period, which you would expect to have been completed at a particular point in time. I'm also, in my report, presenting all of the recommendations that we are tracking that are not just OIPA. And so when, for example, it's showing that through February 28th, for the recommendations that were due at that period in time, we were basically 66% completed. So it's a different perspective, and it will provide a little more context in regards to the numbers that you are seeing. So I would like to offer that so that there's a holistic discussion.
I think from a bigger picture, Agnes, in the exec committee, when we provided the report, the quarterly update, I think they basically told us the same thing that you're trying to tell us. How can we help you to keep moving? And I think it's this report, let it be based on that timetable, this timetable, whatever, they're very good. And a little bit what Councilmember Cito said, well, big picture, are we getting better? Are some of them going to make sense? Some of the recommendations, or they maybe they don't make sense now. I'm gonna make up one right now, which I don't use system. So why spend the resource of doing that while I better put all my resources and my more stuff? I personally think in the assessment portion of it, and I really appreciate also the financial assessment, and we had a very in-depth conversation when that was going on with Courtney, is that we are shifting, and I'm saying all of us, and we should be hopefully in agreement on this. Yes, there is still the accountability that needs to be tracked in the action items, and we need to keep doing what we're doing, but we also need to start shifting on not that much looking on the past, but looking forward. Because a lot of the audits, which are very valuable, did a snapshot in the past. And they're good, and they highlight things, and we need to correct things, and they should be happening still, but at the same time, we need to put an equal amount of effort or balance the effort to start looking into. So having that balance and also on strategic thinking for the future from an audit committee perspective, will be finding that sweet spot and that bandwidth of improving corrections, making things happen, checking boxes of getting things done so they fit in a bigger picture, but keep delivering the core responsibilities of the agency. And so it is something like that. We're also putting a little bit more thought on the recommendations, regardless of what audit comes out, from where it's coming, more thought into that and where it fits in the strategic thought about it, in the deliverable timetable of it. I think at one point and moment the agency was in such going, mea culpa, bring it on, I accept it, let's move on, right? In thought and layering it out also with the strategy to move the agency to the core responsibilities is what I think we need to figure out as a whole. And
I think it might be very helpful will be Courtney and Shawnee. Maybe for those past due findings, take a look. Any of them are really high risk. Like if we don't fix it soon, that might create a risk for the agency, financially, reputation, whatever. Because not all findings have equal weight, right? If we know as an audit committee not having addressed, so if I have some assurance that high risk ones are being taken care of, I think I feel a lot better.
And as an FYI, in the presentation to the executive, medium risk, and provided an overview of the ones that were outstanding, why they were outstanding, and what we were doing to remedy those.
Risk, we can definitely do icing. So we go through and validate everything that you're seeing. If we see a recommendation that is no longer valid, then it would be dismissed and we'd bring that to you. Additionally, as far as, oh, I can't even read my writing. In the timelines, like, so when the management brings different timelines to us, right? So as you saw, 65 recommendations, only 17 were provided. But then in the quarter that followed, they brought implementation dates to show that they needed to shift or change things. So those mechanisms are already in place. The independence that my office provides, management brings forth an audit recommendation update, we haven't verified that, we haven't looked at that. So the information that we're bringing to you is based on our validation process. So I think it's just making sure that we're consistent in following our process timelines, if they're realistic. There was a part made, and while this is a little but I really love your framing of the priorities of like incorporating that in here, that these are high and they need to be implemented on time. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Agnes covered perfectly the point that I was going to make regarding prioritizing some of these. I have seen charts, and I don't remember which entity was sharing it with us, where they are prioritized based on highest risk or biggest focus should go here, and then the ones that are not that as critical as some of the others. So I just wanted to thank you for bringing that conversation up, because I think that is my feeling is there is a lot of work to be done, and the work is being done, but it's taking time. Understanding it maybe a little bit more granularly in that regard, I think would be helpful and would give us a little bit more confidence, because I do agree with you. The statistics are difficult to swallow, but again, you have to consider the statistics in the with looking forward to the strategy that we are pursuing in the near future. And the one thing you got everything that changes, things are always changing, and I just want in this committee, I continue to edify for myself the roles and the independence from WIPA and the role that the new office from internal controls is taking on. So again, those are moving things, at least in my mind. I continue what we're really doing here, and I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Vice Chair. Go ahead, Member Zia.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Appreciate it. Yeah, I guess so we've talked a little bit about this, just a little bit of a logistical thing. When I was noticing the items listed in the appendix, all the plan dates were 10:30, and of the ones that we were able to review, I seem to recall we have lots of recommendations for us to actually review. Is that the implication that we've talked about?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Great, thanks you. And then with respect to a priority, which I entirely agree with that conversation, I seem to recall from previous audit results that we actually do prioritize recommendations as part of that result. So I'm kind of wondering,
we have implemented that recently. Looking at what's coming due or past due and putting a priority lens on that.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, that'll be really helpful, and thanks, Sinead, for bringing that up and taking a look at that as well. But because Mark, I can't remember who said it. One of the staff members in the last presentation made. I mean, there's clearly some things. I mean, in the last presentation we said there was unfortunately that not all the documents live in one place, but clearly a high priority, because one of the problems we had with previous audits is we didn't even know where the documents lived. They were they were presumably there, but it could take months to find them. So a great key starting point is like, yeah, actually the document just is able to be identified and found quickly. But to the point that I was making on the last agenda item as well, though, the useful things are like some of the other issues that we ran into with contracts is maybe not all the right signatures were in place and that kind of stuff. And the answer at that point in time was, well, ERP is going to fix this. But now if we're going to stay in the CMS, is this a higher priority item that says, no, we need to make sure that we have a policy? Again, I know that we, staff, as Mario mentioned previously, just wanted to get, and if you look, and it could be just getting them, and so it may not feel as quite as bad as it looks, but I agree with my counterpart here that it doesn't look good right now.
Thanks for all the comments. It's nice to have everybody in the room. Obviously there's dialogue happening on a daily basis to resolve this. I don't think anybody within the agency is particularly happy with the overall score, but I think it's the progress that's being made and will continue to be made. And I believe that, you know, more progress will be made in the shorter time ahead of us than has ever been made, just because of everybody working together. Obviously, with Sinead here and her responsibility, kind of bringing everybody together and making sure that everybody's doing the right thing is really going to help. And again, I appreciate the independence from the auditors, because you kind of play that, show us proof, we'll take it off the list. We're not saying you're not doing it, we're not saying you are doing it. We just, at that time, it wasn't being done. And I think that's an important part of what it is. So I appreciate the dialogue that's taking place today and moving forward. So, were there any other comments? All right, we're going to move on to
audits. We're deferring some audits, and then, as I had mentioned previously, the HR hiring practices and promotion audit we brought in-house. So instead of contracting that out. So the changes to the work plan is to extend the administration of the BIKE program, early action audit plan. We're doing that because as we got into it, it's an extensive scope and complex. We also had team members that we had to reassign to other things during the time period, and that projected our completion date out further. So we're anticipating to release this in the second quarter of fiscal year 2027, and you'll see that represented when I bring the new annual work plan in June. And then we are also extending, no, we don't have a PowerPoint. Okay. We are also extending the inventory management major and minor assets that would have been presented in this year. We were hopeful that we were going to get a later audit committee date in the month, so we're going to have that in the first meeting in July versus making it in this fiscal year, so that's why that's extended. Now we're deferring 2 audits. So it might be because I'm a little optimistic. I can already hear Dave in my head. But there's, this really speaks to the improvements that management is making. Management is underway in implementing improvements. So we want to give them time. So that will be on the work plan. We're just going to push it into next year. The other thing, which was, if you were at the board meeting earlier today, is that there is a capital projects plan that is being put forth, a resource plan, and I had it here, now I can't find it. So to actually help with internal controls, timing, budgeting, all those things, audit recommendations, so a whole department, I don't know if we would say department, but programs being developed to really manage those items. So when we had talked about the assessment of planned capital project outcomes, we really want to step back and allow that implementation to occur before effective. And again, it speaks to the improvements that SANDAG is making. So I think those are the proposed 5 changes that I would like you to adopt. And with that, I'll take questions.
Are there any public comments, Francesca?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We have 2, allegedly Audra, then Mark.
Obviously, if there's people here, it's not a question to ask. Anyway, it's interesting what an FBI investigation will get people to do, right? Oh man, all these bike lanes. I really do not have faith that your audit into the bike lane program or this early action plan is going to really stop it from happening, the fraud, waste, and abuse. I mean, there was already deceptive reporting happening where 93% of funds were spent and only 18% of projects have been completed. We got bike lanes to nowhere, going to nurseries that's not open to the public, onto freeway ramps. I mean, potentially there's some of these that are costing $13 million a mile. That's $2,500 a foot to paint the road green. These things. It's like if there's that you have done your due diligence, that you're spending the people's spending the money wisely and not wasting it. Because I mean, 13 the money could go that would actually help people. So it's just sad to think of how much money and time is going to be spent on this audit. And I guarantee you it's not going to make that cost go down, or the fact that they're going bike lanes to nowhere is not going to change. And it's really sad because people are suffering.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Mark.
So here in your audit committee membership, it says the audit committee may hear items within the subject areas of blah, 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 and investigations into fraud, waste, and or impropriety. So I totally agree with what Audra just said. That's an incredible amount of money for a bike lane. Also, I've told every group in the city, the Board of Supervisors, Sandag many times for years. For example, that instead of building low-income housing, that I think the average cost on a really tiny apartment is $460,000, something like that. You know, Appy's Core 3D printers, they're based out of Texas. You could find you don't need a mixed-use contractor. You can find a simple contractor that goes and works with them, buys 10 of them. If you can get the contract with you guys, 3D print. You could 3D print 12,000 houses, basically all of, or not houses, 10 by 10s. Portable 10 by 10, stackable, movable. They could, or 10 by 40s along the border. And that's so incredibly much less than you guys are spending. But the reason that's not going to happen isn't because it's not absolutely excellent and a great idea. It's because they're investing in housing, huge global corporations that are investing. And the system is set up with Newsom and his corporate oligarchy to make sure that they totally rip us off. And of course, our tax dollars are going to pay for it, no matter how much waste. To make this crappy, overpriced housing instead of 3D printed houses by Appy's Core.
That concludes the.
Are asked to recommend this revision for approval.
Second.
All right, go ahead and vote, please. Looks like it was passed unanimously. For item 7, we're going to be moving to closed session, and just as a note to what was on the agenda, Jacob L. will be included in the closed session. But before we go into closed session, are there any public comments on this, Francesca?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We'll start with Audra.
Infrastructure controls critical infrastructure information relating to cyber security. No data is secure, especially when data is being sold on a subscription basis to third parties, especially when you're working with entities like BlackRock and Vanguard, and you're putting all of your information into this system. They do not care whether or not your data is secure, because it's going to people across the world, and there's no way to keep it secure when it's a business to sell it. And AI is, that's why we've been given data, so it can feed this system that can then, like, everything that you're doing could be potentially at risk for some kind of an attack by another country like China or who knows what. And it's like, you guys can do, but it's not going to make sure that any data is secure. Again, when you're working, so you could spend tons of money pretending that you're going to bring in some kind of other program to make sure that that happens or whatever. But again, you need to be more looking at these entities that you are contracting with, instead of going like, how are we going to, potentially create some kind of You guys tell them all these things, and it's like that this is secure. The way to do that, just not these ones, right?
I think your next speaker will be Mark.
So yeah, what Audrey was saying, and like Tyler Technologies, I mean, they're a global corporation. They have a history of like cyber attacks. Why is it that a company that does 85% of their business with government, finance and such, and the education system, important things, and they weren't prepared to stop cyber attacks? Shouldn't they be like the most prepared ever? And what's worse is, who the hell are they? They aren't American. They're a global corporation. In fact, it's very possible that America and loving when our security data gets breached. Maybe that's the whole idea. Maybe these aren't bugs. Maybe these reports of cybersecurity attacks where there are data breaches and data is lost. Well, they're a foreign global corporation. Why the hell would you think? Who the hell are they? These are basic questions. Like, who the hell is going to go on and get along with whatever they hand you? Whatever nuisance bunch of absolute assholes hands you to do with low-income housing or getting everyone out of their cars into autonomous vehicles or public transportation, you're just going to do it. And you should really think about that. Is there anything you wouldn't do? They told you to do it today.
Thanks, the public comments.
Thank you. At this time, we'd like to ask all members of the public